I am Babla Jonathan, and this is the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Equinoxe television, live from our headquarters in Cameroon's economic capital, dwelling our top stories. The Social Democratic Front SDF political party national chairman John Fundi urges the President of the Republic of Cameroon, Paul Biya, and his government to end what he qualifies as in-house fighting between children of the same land, referring to the close to 5-year-long armed conflict in the northwest and southwest regions of the country. He was speaking to the inside and out of the country. The International Court of Justice rules in favor of Somalia in its long-running dispute with neighboring Kenya over their maritime border. Those were our top stories. The national chairman of the Social Democratic Front SDF political party, John Fundi, has once more called on the President of the Republic of Cameroon, Paul Biya, and his government to put an end to the close to 5-year-long armed conflict in the northwest and southwest regions of the Republic of Cameroon. He was speaking to the inside on the sidelines of Prime Minister Chief Dr. Joseph John Gute's visit to the northwest region within the framework of government's efforts to restore peace and normalcy in the crisis-stricken regions. Take a listen to John Fundi.
We are talking about people's lives, and when we are talking about people's lives, we have to be careful, because you should handle the people's lives better than you'll handle an egg. Because if you handle it otherwise, you fall down now and you collapse. That's all. An egg, a chicken can still lay another egg, whether it hatches a cock or hen. I mean, that's something different. But I cannot replicate Babila to have another Babila if I don't handle you well and you leave and you are no more. So this is what we are saying, that we should sit down. How do we get on? We'll listen to them, take a bit. Listen to this side, take a bit, bring together. If it works, okay, we might move from 1 to 2. But we have 10 steps ahead of us. And as things go on, we'll be moving bit by bit. I told the Prime Minister that we want this war to come to an end. It should be stopped. Because the children in the bushes and the soldiers that are fighting, they are children. And they are fighting amongst themselves. And so we are calling on Mr. Biya to put a stop to this fighting. Let us reconcile ourselves and see how we get on from here.
SDF National Chairman John Fundi is speaking there to the Inside, the weekly news magazine program on Equinoxe television. And to Banja in the west region of the Republic of Cameroon, inhabitants of that area took to the streets today protesting and blocking circulation on the major highway running through that locality in the west region of the country, and they were protesting against what they consider as poor behavior of security officers who are said to have released a suspected thief who was arrested and brought to them. And they were angry about the fact that after they handed the suspected thief to the police, he was released some hours later, and they were demanding that the suspect should be brought to them, and they wanted to execute jungle justice on that suspect. Take a listen to one of them, or two of them.
I'm the one on the machine that it was stolen. So I came in the morning on market day, Sunday, 2nd October 2021. I was unable to meet the machine that I work with, where it was. So please, they catch the thief man, and we don't know exactly what happened that day, so allow him. So all this population here is because they want us, they want peace, they want to live in peace. They want to keep, they catch thief man, and all this population is here because they are angry, because they have the thief, and allow him free to go.
They caught him, they took him to the brigade in that subdivision. After taking him to that brigade of that subdivision, he was taken to the company. From there, the man was being taken to court. The matter was already in court, was already at the procureur. Normally he's supposed to be at the waiting trial, waiting for the judgment, but we don't know how managed that he is out. And now my population said that they want the bandit here now, or let they at the court that the bandit was already with them there. Let them bring him. So since morning, I have calmed them down. I told them that they should go back. They've already, brought out their problems. We have understood.
An angry inhabitants of Banja in the west region of the Republic of Cameroon and the divisional officer of that administrative unit speaking there. Elsewhere, CPDM militants of the ruling Cameroon People's Democratic Movement CPDM political party orchestrate violence in the far north region of the country, notably in the Diamare division, and Charles Ikome tells us that this is the outcome of conflicts within the party. His report.
A series of problems have contributed to the dysfunctioning of the procedures governing the basic organs of the CPDM party within the context of an elections in Diamare, far north region of Cameroon. According to militants, numerous voting bureaus opened at 1 p.m. instead of 8 a.m. as initially planned. Moreover, so many militants were surprised to see that their names were not pasted on the electoral list. The voting bureau is normally supposed to open at 8 a.m. and close at 5 p.m. Now we are beginning the voting exercise at 1 p.m. with over 563 people who are here to vote. In regards to voting materials, ballot boxes were fabricated with cardboard paper, an element which raised fraudulent suspicions from voters. They have assembled and glued cardboard paper to create ballot boxes for us to vote. This is insane. How do they expect us not to believe that there is no fraud going on during these elections? In order to control the voting exercise and operations, militants who suspected fraud decided to confiscate electoral reports so as to review them, an act which later degenerated as a result of chaos between the militants. The different candidates running for the elections mutually accepted the fact that there were some problems during the electoral phase. It's no surprise that the elections were rigged because the acting president of the voting bureau was voted and no document or notification showed that this person was voted or nominated for this purpose. This election exclusively concerns the CPDM militants from Marwa 3. There is no reason why militants of other parties are meddling in CPDM affairs. At the end of the elections, Adamu Sidiki was elected president of the CPDM section in Diamare, results which are still being contested by the opposition candidate Saili Dairu and his team.
A 27-year-old bike rider, Jami Mulium, dies in unclear circumstances in gendarmerie detention here in Cameroon's economic capital, Douala. It is alleged he died of torture, and Equinoxe television went investigating. Immaculate Fogwe has more.
Amil Molium Usuf, who had to abandon school so as to become the breadwinner of his family following the death of his father, is arrested and kept behind bars at the Mbopi Gendarmerie Brigade in Douala. He is accused of conniving with another bike rider to rob a customer who was on board his motorcycle around the Kilometer Seng neighborhood in the Douala 2 subdivision. His mother narrates the circumstances that led to his arrest.
Jami Moulio Souf m'a appelé à 3h30 le matin, lundi pour mardi matin.
My son called me on Monday night, breaking Tuesday, that he has been arrested for conniving with another bike rider to attack a customer. They are accusing my son of picking up a customer from an agency. On their way, they were stopped by two boys who had on them knives. According to them, my son managed to escape, leaving behind his client. The client says his laptop and the sum of 8,500 francs were seized. He believes my son has a hand in the attack. So I asked if he has proof that it was my son who orchestrated the attack, and he said he was able to recognize the bike. After carrying out investigation, it was revealed by a popular telecommunication company that at the time of the attack, the accused was rather at his residence in the Beppi neighborhood. Even with this proof, Jamil Mulium is forced to spend several days behind bars with family members denied access to his cell. October 7th, 2021, Jamil is declared dead. Apart from not informing the family about the death of their son, they are equally denied access to the cops. When I arrived to the Gendarmerie Brigade, I saw a crowd and several vehicles. I asked the onlookers what was happening. It was then that I was informed that a boy called Jamil died in the cell. They denied allowing me to see the corpse of my son. Let justice prevail. The corpse of Jamil is later transported to the Bonanjo Military Hospital where an autopsy is carried out. Till date, the results have not been revealed. Family members believe their son experienced excruciating pain which resulted to his death. 4 days after the accused is declared dead, the uncle of the boy is a lone family member who is given access to the cops. He reveals that his son died after being unable to endure the torture meted on him at the prison cell. The death of their son has left family members, neighbors, and the entire Beppi City neighborhood in shock. The mother of Jamil says all hope is lost, given that her only source of hope is gone. Look at the little plank house I am living in. My son was the one paying my rent. I am now forced to go back to the village.
Immaculate Fogwe reporting the United Nations top court has ruled that largely in favor of Somalia in its long-running dispute with Kenya over the maritime border. Kenya had earlier accused the International Court of Justice of bias and said it will not accept the ruling. The case concerned a 38,000 square mile or 100,000 square kilometer triangle in the Indian Ocean that is thought to be rich in oil and gas. The dispute has been at the heart of a diplomatic war between the neighbors. For the past 4 decades, Kenya has set a line due east of the point where the two countries meet at the coast. The coast represents the maritime border. Somalia, however, argued in court that the sea frontier in the Indian Ocean should follow on in the same direction as the land border. The panel of 14 judges sitting in The Hague said that Kenya had not proved that Somalia had previously agreed to its claimed border. They instead drew a new line which has split the disputed area into two. Coming up next, Talking Point. Thank you for staying with us in this edition of Talking Points. Today we are receiving traditional medical practitioner Dr. Muvala Marcel. You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Babula Jonathan. I'm so happy to be part of the program this evening.
There is a growing tendency of making the COVID-19 vaccine obligatory in the Republic of Cameroon. According to a communique signed or a release signed by the Secretary General at the Presidency, Minister Ferdinand Gongo, it is now obligatory for all personnel of the presidency. Nobody gets into the presidency without presenting the COVID-19 test. What do you think about this tendency of making the COVID-19 test obligatory?
Okay, Mr. Babila, I want to think that the issue about the COVID vaccine is that the public is not actually complying well to the vaccination because many people are still skeptical. You will remember when the vaccine came out, there was a rumor in the social media that the vaccine had a lot of side effects and people were afraid. But I think that the government is in charge, and if the government sees that the vaccine is actually safe, and we need it because the vaccination is for the safety of the whole population. It's not an individual something. So now this policy is that the government is trying to make it in such a way that everybody will succumb to the vaccine. But I want to still think that vaccination is something that is, you give the information to the people and you make them to understand the importance of the vaccine, and any individual have the right or the choice to accept the vaccine or to refuse it.
However, as of now, the stand of the government, the Ministry of Public Health, is that it is not obligatory in Cameroon, but there is that tendency of moving towards making it obligatory for all Cameroonians to go for the COVID-19 vaccine. Maybe we talk about the importance of this vaccine so that people can actually go for it, not by some kind of force, but by understanding and with their will.
Just like I said, a vaccine is not something that is new in Cameroon or in the whole world. The essence of vaccine is prevention of certain diseases, especially like we have the COVID-19 pandemic that came in and many people had to suffer from that crisis. Now, if the vaccine is available, there are a lot of things that people need to understand about the vaccine, the safety and the efficacy. And this is what the government is supposed to make available to the population. Let the people understand how safe the vaccine is, how important the vaccine is. It is not because if we want to use force or to force people to go in for the vaccine, we might end up not reaching our target population, because it is not all about the availability of the vaccine, but the target population. Are the people ready to get the vaccine? And if the people are not ready to get the vaccine, it is the duty of the government to set in policy to convince people, not to force people to go for the vaccine. That is what I think. Like in all vaccination, even when for the vaccination calendar of children, we make the mothers to understand the importance of the vaccine and what can be the outcome of failure to vaccinate the children, and they come for the vaccine. But in most cases, you see some parents, they don't come for the vaccine, and at the end of the day, you see their children suffering from those conditions. So I think that it is a matter of choice, and what the government is doing is not wrong, but to an extent the population still have the right to decide to go in for the vaccine or not. But my advice to the population is that if the Cameroon government is thinking that the vaccine should be obligatory to everybody, then let us see into it, because the safety of an individual in the population is the safety of the whole population, because if all should go for the vaccine, then we are sure that our population will be safe.
We're sure that our population will be saved, but many are still very, very skeptical about this vaccine, and even more worried about the fact that there's this tendency of making it obligatory. As I said earlier, as of now, at the presidency of the Republic in Yaoundé, all the personnel are obliged to go in for the vaccination, and none of them will be able to get into the presidency, according to the communique or the release signed by the Secretary General of Ferdinand Gongo, without that vaccine. If that is extended to the other institutions of the country, the ministries, and even private institutions, will that be a good thing?
Yes, I want to think you see like this issue of COVID-19 is a skeptical disease, and everything about COVID-19 has actually been frightening to the public right up to the point that the vaccine is coming in, because you cannot travel out of the country except you have a good vaccination calendar about the COVID. But you still see people going behind and making the vaccination card without receiving the vaccine in order to travel out of the country. So the whole thing is creating a fiasco in the community. But I want to believe that, like I said earlier, because there's still a lot, and even the vaccine is still in process, research is still in process, everything is still in process. I think it is still a bit early to convince the public or to say that it should be obligatory. But I think that the government is having a training system, and if the government is imposing the vaccine on the population, then it means that the system that is concerned with the health care of our community has actually worked out the situation and see that the vaccine is actually safe and very efficacious.
And the COVID-19 tests, as you indicated earlier, is obligatory. To be able to travel out of this country, you must show your COVID-19 tests that covers a period of not more than 48 hours. I think so. But there seems to be a growing increase. There seems to be an increase in the COVID-19 number of persons, in the number of persons who are testing positive for coronavirus in the country. What can possibly explain that?
You know, the COVID vaccine is not yet standardized. I can't say that, because we have different types of vaccine for the same illness. Different company coming out with different brand. There are some of the vaccine that you can take 2 shots and you are okay. There are some that you take one, like the Johnson. Now when you come to other vaccine, the Moderna, that you need to take 2 shots, and there is age limit. Now if you are not yet 12 or 18 years, you are not viable for the vaccination. Now the question I'm still asking is that people that are below that age, can they not be exposed to the virus? And if they can be exposed to the virus, even if the virus cannot affect them, can they not transmit the infection to another person? So they see a lot about the COVID-19, and the vaccine that has actually come out in all is to help the population. But I think that there's a lot of work. The vaccine is supposed to be made published when we have clear and very precise information to pass to convince the population. And also, like I said earlier, Mr. Babila, there was a rumor in the social media about a lot of side effects of the vaccine. So I think that it is the responsibility of the government to clear out that dust, to clear out that mess, so that the population is actually convinced. The population is actually sure, the safety of the population is actually guaranteed before I think that people will go in for the vaccine.
The government has to enhance communication on the coronavirus vaccine in order to convince the people. Now, let's talk about another health problem, breast cancer. This is another very complicated health problem that is affecting many people, especially women, but men also. What's the rate of breast cancer death in the world today?
Yes, breast cancer is actually something of concern, because we are having many people suffering, like you said, especially the women, but men are also prone to that condition. And when we talk of breast cancer, it is a mutating gene that starts developing in the breast, and at the early phase it can be easily treated. So we always advise that women should go for periodic screening of breast to rule out breast cancer. It can start like breast node. In some people, because the cancer develops in stages, there are early phases that can be easily treated medically, but in the late phase, the patient can only end up with surgery or with palliative care. So what is important here about breast cancer is that women should understand the different stages of the development, and the first thing to understand here is that if the woman discovers any abnormal changes in the breast, it can be a breast lump, it can be a small node, it can be changed in color or pain and so on, it is good to go immediately for medical checkup.
What are the causes?
Cancer in general, not only breast cancer, is difficult at times to really say to precise a cause, because like I said earlier, it is a kind of mutating gene that develop in the cells of the body and take a particular part of the body, like we are talking about the breast, and they start to grow. Some books says that it can be drugs. Certain drugs can initiate the growth. It can also be genetic. Cancer can run in the family, but that notwithstanding the cause, you have pollutants, smoke, and those who are closer to chemicals, those who are close to the industry, and so on, and some chemicalized drugs too also expose patients to that. But notwithstanding, what is important here is to understand that, because it can happen to anybody and at any stage of their life, so you understand that when there are some abnormal changes, especially in the breast, that we are talking specifically about breast cancer, it is good to go for medical checkup, because at the early phase, like I said earlier, the cancer can be handled. We have radiotherapy. In some patients we give only little chemotherapy and they're out of the situation. But when the situation is worse, now we need to do surgery, and before surgery, maybe the patient will need to take chemotherapy for some time. And if the patient is not at the phase that medically we can handle it, we might only give palliative care. Palliative care here means that we only give something to support the patient for some short time, and at the end of the day, the patient can lose their life.
All right. How can a woman check her breast from time to time to be sure that everything is okay, to maybe identify a ball somewhere in the breast and so on, just to be some kind of continuous check?
Thank you, Mr. Babla. That's a very nice question, because even in the clinic, when the women they come there for their visit and so on, we always give them the formality of checking for breast cancer. We give them the different phases of palpation where they can palpate to get, and then normally, if you have an abnormal node in one side of the breast, you try to palpate the other to see if that same node is there. And if you have a node in one side of the breast and it's absent in the other side of the breast, you should start to put question sign, because like I said, breast nodules start in most cases with no pain, no discomfort, and in some cases they are very little. So if you are not used to palpating and checking, you might not notice it, and you might only notice that there's an abnormality or a problem when the node is already at the late phase. So there are different phases. We give them the different phases. You have the nipple, you have the side, the right, the left, the upper, and the lower part of the breast. When we have the woman, we can use and we demonstrate so that the other women they get it. But everything remaining the same. The hospital is available, clinics are spread everywhere. So the woman should take it as a challenging work to go to the hospital where you can get details about this issue of breast cancer. There are things that we take nothing is happening, but at the end of the day, if you are not very lucky, you might find yourself in crisis.
All right, there are some discussions on social media about the role of men for married women and the role of children, for example, in checking the breast, in just making sure that everything is okay.
Yes, it is very true. We understand that, like, for instance, there is something like a woman that is breastfeeding. You have many women that are breastfeeding that can end up with breast abscess because a particular part of the or side of the breast, they are not giving it to the child. So when there is that stasis of breast engorgement, some abnormalities start to set in. Some papers are also saying that a woman that is giving the breast to the husband can also help to prevent some of this condition, because, like I said, one of the treatment is hormonal therapy. There are some hormones that the body of the woman produces when the man is also sucking the breast, same that when the child is sucking the breast. So those physical activity actually help. But the most important thing here is always seeking medical checkup, especially a woman that is already at the age of 12 years. That's the mature age for the woman, with the breast already well developed, because, like I said, the breast abscess or breast lump can start at any phase. So you start palpating your breast and checking for nodule. And if you don't have any node at that early phase, there can be some changes of color as the woman is growing up. It is right for the mother to check the child, especially if the child has already started developing breast, because we have in many cases coming to the hospital with the breast lump. If the child is sometimes hiding it because at that teenage age the child doesn't want to expose the breast, even to the mother, or at that adolescent age. But in most cases, if the mother is closer to the child and checking the breast, you can diagnose it earlier and say medical advice.
All right, before we go, quickly, for the many, it seems to be quite difficult to check that.
Yes, it's very, like you said earlier, breast cancer is very also rare in men, but it does happen, and like we are trying to say, it is very difficult to diagnose it in men, but the diagnosis is still the same like for women. It means that even though the man look like you don't have breast, when there's an abnormal change or a node, you will feel it, and the diagnosis can even be very easy in men who are very vigilant, because when you discover that you have node in your breast, because with the women their breast is big, the node might be there and they will not notice it, but with the men, with the small breast that they have, any abnormal change or node there, they can be easily diagnosed.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Muvara Marcel. You're a tradimedical practitioner. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us. That's it for today. Goodbye.